A very good evening to all of you. We warmly welcome all of you join today for the inaugural webinar session of the Lex Talk Webinar Series organized by Beyond the Chambers Initiative. Beyond the Chambers is an initiative founded by a group of young lawyers who are striving towards the advancement of legal profession, focusing especially on areas of professional ethics, values, and professional development. Today, you are witnessing the very first webinar session of the Lex Talk Webinar Series titled Making Inroads in International Legal Arena. The resource person of the day is none other than Honorable Aruna Rodrigo, the first Sri Lankan American appointed to the judicial bench in state of California. Honorable Aruna Rodrigo was appointed as a judge for the Superior Court of San Bernardino County. He obtained his undergraduate degree in criminal justice from San Diego State University, Juris Doctor of Law, and a Master of Public Administration from University of Laval. He was admitted to practice law in state of California in 2008 and is a certified family law specialist by the State Bar of California. He was also an adjunct law professor at University of Laval College of Law. Until his appointment as a judge for the Superior Court, he held various senior trial attorney positions, including working at the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office. We are honored to have you today, sir. The moderator of this session would be Mr. Cherag Nilgiriya, Attorney at Law. Without taking further time, I would now hand over the proceedings to the moderator. Over to you, Cherag.
Very good morning to you, sir. It is an absolute honor and privilege for us to feature an accomplished yet a humble personality of your stature in the first episode of Lex Talk Webinar Series hosted by the Beyond the Chambers Initiative. The main objective of conducting this webinar series is to create an intellectual platform to assist and facilitate the professional development of young lawyers in Sri Lanka. Now, in commencing today's discussion, we certainly cannot overlook your professional accomplishments in the recent past, especially being the first Sri Lankan American to be appointed to the judicial bench in California. So we would like to know more about your professional journey, sir. I mean, did you have this ambition to become a judge when you joined the legal profession, or was it a subsequent choice that you made later in your career? How did your professional journey unfold, sir?
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
All right, I apologize. Thank you. Ayubowan, everyone. Your question was whether I was, or as opposed to someone, or it was myself who wanted to make the journey to the bench. It's something that I always wanted to do. I wanted to become a lawyer and help people. I think generally I gravitated towards becoming a judicial officer or a judge. And it was one of our judges who I appeared before who really encouraged me to apply and become a judge. So it was a combination of many things. But again, I would be lying if I told you that it's not something I always looked forward to ever since I was a little kid.
So I believe, sir, you have served for almost 10 years as an attorney before getting appointed to the judicial bar in California. What sort of an experience, what's the difference between being in the bar and being in the bench when you are in practice?
In state of California, you have to be a practicing attorney for at least 10 years prior to applying to become a judge. It's a significant difference from what I remember. I loved practicing law. That was something I cherished. I It allowed me to help a lot of people, which I enjoyed quite a bit. Becoming a judge was, again, I thought the bare minimum requirement was 10 years. So I was very pleased that it took me about a year, a little over a year, to become a judge. Some people take about 15. I feel very fortunate to have been appointed fairly quickly, and being one of the youngest judges in Southern California. I feel very blessed.
See me now?
Yes, we can see you, sir.
All right, I apologize, but your question was regarding young attorneys and having the ability to perhaps mentor or work under another experienced attorney, and whether I had any advice regarding that issue. I apologize, I missed it.
Yes, my question was, now usually when a junior joins the bar here, there are many challenges that a junior faces at the initial stage of the career because of the competitiveness of the profession over the years. So is it the same over there, or what kind of a role a junior lawyer has to play in US?
I would say it's very similar. Senior, junior lawyers are in a position to mentor new attorneys, and I always emphasize the role of mentoring. Whether when I was in private practice, I was one of the partners at our firm, I took a great deal of time making sure the younger attorneys were aware, too, they respected the area of law. I don't think a lot of practicing attorneys, newly admitted attorneys, have an idea of what the law and the practice entails. So it is very important that if you are new or newly admitted to the bar, that you find a mentor and that you learn everything you can until you are comfortable enough to venture out on your own or have the ability to go litigate in court yourself. When I first started, I second chaired many trials, and that only reason I did that is so that I can gain experience as an attorney until I was comfortable enough to handle my own trials and even meeting with some clients. But it is huge. I think the trade of practice of law is something that's learned. You have to pass it down. If we don't take the responsibility of teaching younger generations, I think that art will be lost. But I think the respect of that law is important. So younger attorneys do need to understand that aspect of it.
So what I understood from your comments was that's a young attorney, or wherever, even a young attorney here in Sri Lanka, or whether it is in the US, a young attorney will have to burn the midnight oil at the initial stages down the line, till getting established. So I guess it is the same with regard to both the jurisdictions. So now I would like to invite your attention towards the American judicial system, sir, because I guess there's a difference between our judicial system here and the US judicial system. Now, here in Sri Lanka, we are in a time period where, in the midst of many challenges, significant legal reforms are being introduced to both substantive law as well as procedure. And plans to fully automate the entire judicial system is also in the pipeline. So in that backdrop, we would like to know especially about the case management system you are having in the US, and how the proceedings are being conducted over there, and like to what extent technology is being used in the court process.
Sure. Far as a quick synopsis of the American legal system, as you may be aware, California is one of many states here, so we do have a unique jurisprudence to state of California. State of California, as far as the legal court is concerned, it's the Superior Court, Court of Appeals, then the Supreme Court. And then there's the federal aspect where the Federal District Court, Federal Appeals Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court. Jurisdiction from jurisdiction varies a little bit, but in general, that is the same procedure. For example, state of New York, their highest court is called Superior Court, and their lowest court is called Supreme Court, which is a bit confusing. That's not the case in California. But in our jurisdiction in California, each court is divided into different litigation areas. For example, we have a civil division, criminal division, family law division, probate, small claims, traffic, unlawful detainers. Those are called litigation areas. That's essentially where we might have different courthouses to address each of those different areas. In general, you can divide each of these litigation areas to criminal and civil, but there's so many civil litigation areas that we break them down to finite detail, as you can tell. As far as the pandemic and the steps that we have taken as far as case management, we've had a general order from our presiding judge. That's called the PJ. He or she is in charge of administrative, and he is essentially the supervising judge of our county. Our county consists of 75 judges. We have over 600 employees, but about 75 judges who sit in various courthouses. There's about 9 courthouses in our county, and this varies from county to county, as you can tell. And we have a general order that limited public access because of COVID. In other words, unless you were a litigant or party, you were not permitted to be in our courthouse. For that reason, we have permitted a lot of Zoom appearances. We have allowed Zoom live streaming of our proceedings. For example, many of my trials are done through live proceedings via Zoom. So you make a request, and then I would approve whether you can hear our proceedings or not. Some other counties allow you to just drop in and view and hear the proceedings, not video, but just audio for now. And recently we have rescinded that general order because of COVID. As far as other limitations on COVID, it seems to be easing up a bit here in the U.S., especially California. As the numbers go down, we still wear face coverings, which is mandatory in our court. We might be lifting that coming up in about 60 or 90 days, but all litigants, including judges, wear face coverings. That has become the new normal, as I'm sure many of you are aware in Sri Lanka. So that's really the nutshell what we're doing. I can talk about case management, of how we handle case files and things like that, if you like. Otherwise, I'll wait to hear from you.
Of course, we would like to know, because back here in Sri Lanka, our case management system is still basically a manual system we are relying on. And we are in the process of automating the system. The relevant authorities are taking measures to implement and automate the case management system, as well as to promote virtual hearings from the extent we are having right now. Because during the COVID pandemic, we initiated virtual hearings back here in Sri Lanka, but not in a very big way. So we are in the process of introducing automation to our entire judicial system. So whereas case management system currently is manual, as I said, so we would like to know more about how it is being done over there.
Sure. So in our county, in my area of litigation, which is family law under civil, we are fully automated to a point where I have no physical files in my department. There are some older judicial officers, judges who prefer to have hard files. I essentially don't want any hard files because I'm so accustomed to having everything electronically. We are issued computers on our bench in our chambers. We have laptops that they issue. So the laptops allow me to prepare, and then I call all my calendars electronically through my computer. All our pleadings are scanned and accessible through our case management system, which is called Odyssey or Judges Edition. It allows me to highlight files, allows me to take notes on cases. It allows me to see all the pleadings that have been filed in a particular case. So we are a little bit behind. Essentially, LA County, which is our sister county, which is next to us, they're fairly ahead of the game, but we are about 2 years behind them. They also have a lot of automation, but in our county, we're essentially paperless, which I love because one, paper is a precious resource, and I think in the legal field we use and waste a significant amount of paper, unfortunately. And if the courts are able to get into a position to eliminate completely or minimize the use of paper, that would be a significant impact on all of us, wherever you are in the world. So I am proud to say that we are fairly automated, which helps everybody, including litigants that we need to help, because the information is readily available. Whether it's an arrest warrant to arrest someone, you want to make sure that information is up to date to the minute or second, so that there are no wrongful arrests or dangerous people are not released because of the documents that the judges are reviewing and signing. And we're not waiting for anybody to take a hard file anywhere, because it's fairly done electronically and it's instantaneous.
Thank you, sir. And on the same aspect, in an extension to my previous question, I would like to know what kind of an impact did the COVID-19 pandemic situation have on the US judicial system? Now, back here in Sri Lanka, at the initial outbreak of the pandemic, the court system came to a standstill, along with every other sector in the country. But during the quarantine curfew, the courts functioned to a limited extent, I would say, to entertain urgent matters purely based on the basis of urgency. And once the quarantine curfew was lifted, the courts resumed to function whilst adhering to the health guidelines. And last year, we enacted the COVID-19 Act, which is the main piece of legislation with regard to the pandemic situation, which mainly provides relief to people who are unable to comply with the prescriptive time periods stipulated in law, and to facilitate conducting virtual hearings. So likewise, what was the impact of COVID-19 pandemic to your system, and how did you all manage it? Did you pass any specific legislation, or how was it managed?
I think, like many other jurisdictions, including countries, we were caught flat-footed. We were not prepared for what no one anticipated would last months or years. So we did close down for about 90 days, a little bit longer. During that time, as in Sri Lanka, it appears we did conduct some emergency hearings, restraining orders, and criminal matters that needed to be addressed. All other areas were suspended and frozen, essentially. All jury trials were suspended. But as far as legislation, it was fairly quick on the part of the legislature to pass down guidance for the courts. We have passed a lot, allowing telephonic or remote appearances. The judges are very cognizant that, one, the socioeconomic impact of COVID has limited people's ability to appear in court, whether it's daycare, employment issues. So we have been very cognizant of that issue. So we are very lax in allowing people to continue matters if it's appropriate, or allowing them to appear telephonically or through Zoom. There are many logistical issues. For example, we still have a backlog because of COVID. For example, some courthouses have about still a 90-day backlog. That means people are not able to file documents. The clerk's office is also working overtime trying to clear that backlog. There are also, excuse me, there's also specific legislation that has been passed to allow proof of service, for example. What we call due process essentially is the proof of service requirement that when you file any documents with the court, you have to serve opposing party. That's essentially the proof of service. There has been new legislation that has permitted people to serve electronically as opposed to in person. So those type of things have been made. We also have to balance people's ability to appear remotely for trials. For example, I am reluctant at times to allow people to appear remotely. A good example of that is exactly what I went through this morning, unfortunately. I was not able to log on despite me having a test. Now, that becomes problematic for individuals who have trial. So we have to ensure that they have equipment, the necessary internet speed, so the courts do allow public places for them to go into so they can use internet and computers to make court appearances. The other aspect is, as a judge, whether I want to allow people to appear remotely when I'm doing trial, because I do want to assess veracity and credibility. It's hard when I don't see a face or look into someone's eyes to see if they're credible. That's part of what I do, is to assess credibility, to see if you're truthful or if you're being evasive in questions. And that's difficult to do through a remote technology. There's nothing like having someone in the witness stand where I can look them in the eye and see if they're fabricating or being evasive in questions.
Thank you, sir. It was a very informative explanation. Now I would like to take our discussion to a different area. Since there's a lot of young lawyers joining us today with the session, a lot of young lawyers in Sri Lanka are eager to know how to impress, a judge when it comes to making even a simple application, because it is very important to learn the court craft for any young lawyer to build up a successful career in the legal practice. And since you have served as an attorney and now you are serving as a judge, in your perspective, how must a lawyer must conduct himself whilst on feet, and what kind of skills and attributes must a young lawyer develop in this aspect?
That's a good question. Essentially, being involved in the bar association and things like that will genuinely help. I feel as if we are addressing people who already know this, because all of you are here and are a big part of Beyond the Chamber. So I understand that as a young lawyer, you are nervous and you certainly want to excel. One of the biggest pointers that I indicate to new lawyers is being prepared. I can't tell you how many attorneys appear before me that are not prepared. When I was a practicing attorney, it was something that I took pride in. I wanted to be the one that was most prepared. I wanted to be more prepared than the judge. I wanted to be more prepared than opposing counsel. I wanted to know the facts and the case better than even my own client. So I took a lot of pride in that, to a point where I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning just so that I can get work done before I go to court. So being prepared is something I'm sure you have heard ever since you were young, but it's a whole new level. You need to understand that level of preparedness is what really separates good attorneys, mediocre attorneys, and bad attorneys, because it's fairly easy for a judge to see when someone's prepared. Regardless of how well you do in the courtroom, public speaking, or making arguments, you need to be prepared. That's the bottom line. And the other issue is just being confident without being arrogant. There's a difference. There's a significant difference, being confident and being arrogant. Being confident means that you are zealously representing a client's position and you believe in the cause. Sometimes we don't have that luxury because we're hired to do a job. We do our job, but you have to be confident in your position. And being prepared is probably the best advice that I can give. And many law students that I speak to, I tell them the exact same thing, that they just need to be confident in what they do.
Thank you, sir. And there are a number of young lawyers in Sri Lanka who wants to start their career in different foreign jurisdictions. For instance, if we take USA, what kind of process is there for a young lawyer who is ambitious to come and join the profession in the USA and to develop the career down there?
When you come, if that's your goal, is to make that leap, whether it's just jurisdiction. I don't know about other jurisdiction. I can only speak to regarding California jurisdiction. I know there are a few Sri Lankan attorneys here who have gone to law school in Sri Lanka, if I'm not mistaken. Once you arrive here, if that's your goal, I would recommend you interning with someone that can allow you to learn the system a bit. And then you will have to sit for the California bar exam, including what we call the baby bar. California bar is one of the hardest bar exams in the country. I believe the pass rate is less than half. There's so many people who take the bar, but it's not uncommon. It has been done. I know of few attorneys who have done it in here, but you have to remember the legal profession is not like the medical profession for Sri Lankans. Growing up, Amma and Tata all wanted us to become doctors and engineers. That's what Sri Lankan culture, society dictates. Certainly, those are exceptional career paths, but it's not for all of us. My younger brother's a medical doctor, and I can be honest and say I'm not smart enough to be a medical doctor, but so I didn't have a lot of role models to look up to. There's no Sri Lankan judges, there's no many Sri Lankan attorneys, because culturally, that is not something that was accepted here in the U.S. for the generations who have migrated to the U.S. So it was a little difficult finding mentors, but if any of you make that journey and decide I want to make that leap, you can always reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to provide any assistance in providing information. But it's a noble profession, whether you're there in Sri Lanka or here in the U.S. Lawyering is one of the oldest professions. Our job is to defend and represent the sick, the homeless, the minorities of all minorities. And I take that job seriously, as I'm sure you have when you chose to become a lawyer. But just like a medical doctor, you go through the steps when you come to the U.S. If you are changing jurisdictions, you will have to go through the baby bar, take the bar exam, be admitted, and be prepared to read and write. But that's one thing that is exceptional in Sri Lanka, is that every child who goes through the educational system in Sri Lanka are fully capable of writing and speaking fluently in English, and probably speak better English than many of us here because of the British and colonial influences. And Sri Lanka, English is the second language. So it's an exceptional tool and a leg up that many of you already possess. It's incredible. And that's something that you should be proud as all Sri Lankans, that your skill set can be used in anywhere in the world, including the US, if that's what you wish to do.
Thank you, sir, for your inputs. So before we wind up our main discussion and move on to the Q&A session, I would like to ask, what is your message to the young lawyers who are in practice here in Sri Lanka? Because as you very correctly mentioned, the ingredients of lawyering are the same. So what is your message to the young lawyers here in Sri Lanka who are in practice and who also has an aspiration to join the judiciary in the future?
I apologize. I know this is very rude and unprofessional that I'm holding my cell phone, but unfortunately I can't connect any other way. So again, I apologize. This is rude. This is unprofessional. But again, the tips I would have is, as a young lawyer, don't sacrifice family for career. You need to strike a balance between work life and a career life. Career, work, and family. Those things have to be balanced. I'm not religious by any sense, but I'm a Buddhist. I go to the temple with my parents. I do that. The only reason I mention this is because it's important for quality of health and quality of sanity that you have a balance between your work life and your family life. My wife and I have 4 kids, and I wouldn't take anything away from the time I spend with my kids because I love and cherish my family. So having a large family as we do, and both my wife and I are judges. We went to law school together, we practiced together, and we're both judges. But we always take time to be parents. We always take time to be husbands and wives. We also take time to be working and to build our career. Don't think you need to sacrifice one or the other, because once you have that important balance in life, that's when you are most capable of helping people. You are most capable of providing as a wife or a husband or a father, whatever the capacity you are. That's important. So don't lose sight of that. Nothing in what I just said is a substitute for working hard. You have to burn the midnight oil, as he said. You are going to have to do it. It just means that you just have to sleep a little less and grind. That's a term that is significant. You have to grind. You have to work harder than someone else who's sitting next to you. If you want it, you need to grind. But don't sacrifice important things in life, because that is something that will deteriorate your mental health, because your mental health is something you are going to need to successfully do what you do, whether you're a lawyer in the private sector, government sector. You have an important role. That role includes your tranquility and peace at home. So don't overlook that. You need to have self-care. And I speak to many law students here, and I have the same message. The message is, it's all in moderation, all in a perfect harmony, your work and family life. The other tip that I would tell you is, don't chase money. I know it's hard statement. Many of you may find that to be a contradiction at times, but when you enjoy helping people, I think the financial aspect of it will come. When you're a young lawyer, you do have to put in the time until you see the fruits of your labor. And if your goal is to work in the public sector, you're not going to be as lucrative as you might be in the private sector. But the goal is that you are working for a bigger cause. You're working for the betterment of humanity. So don't always chase the money, but certainly one of the beautiful things about the legal profession, which I suspect is the same in Sri Lanka, is that if you genuinely enjoy your job, you will have job satisfaction, and that with job satisfaction will come wealth and notoriety, if that's what you're looking for. But those are really the tips. Again, not to be laboring this issue, but I was never the smartest person in the room. But what really differentiated me and other lawyers, other colleagues, was my willingness to work harder than them. That's one of the reasons I woke up at 4 o'clock, and I was blessed that my wife was able to take the kids and help with the kids. But I got up at 4 so I can work harder, be more prepared than anybody else. And that's because I knew I had to work harder. That was the case in college. Some people are just generally smart. I am smart, but not in that sense, and I just refuse to be outworked. So you need to find your flaw, you need to recognize your flaw, and compensate for it by hard work. There's no substitute for it.
Thank you so much for those insightful thoughts, sir. Which is very encouraging and which is very useful to young lawyers coming up. So I guess now we can move on to the Q&A session of our discussion. The time allocated for this session is 10 minutes, and the forum is open for the audience to pose any questions to Honorable Aruna Rodrigo.
May I ask the question?
Yes, Navid, you can go ahead. Yes.
Yes, so Honorable Sir, so one of the main complaints that people come up when it comes to Sri Lanka legal system is that there's a delay in the process of justice. So may I know what are the mechanisms used in United States to expedite the process of justice?
That's a good question. There's a saying here in the U.S. that, I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. There's a saying, justice delayed is justice denied. I think that's a very good point. What do you do? Unfortunately, the pandemic has really created a significant disparity with socioeconomic and financial situation. So unfortunately, in the U.S., in California, we've had to prioritize some areas of practice. But the way we have elected, at least in my department, is that I personally take time out to sign orders. I personally take a little bit longer on my cases to make sure that people leave with orders because I'm fully aware of the backlog. So I think individually, all our judges here have been taking that responsibility just to do a little bit more. That includes the clerks, the staff, everybody is needing to do a little bit more. Streamlining the process through automation or computerization has been significant. JCC is our California Judicial Council. That is the governing body of all judges and the legal system in the state of California. They have provided significant amounts of funding to a lot of our courts to allow us to purchase new computers, purchase and implement new programs and software. So those are really the things that we're doing to advance the delay in system. And the other practical things is offering overtime to clerks and judicial assistants and everyone else to clear a backlog that's been created. So I don't think there is a magic pill for it, but I think it's just recognizing that we all need to do something different is what we have recognized here, at least in our court.
Thank you, sir.
The floor is still open for our audience to pose any questions.
Dear sir, Honorable sir, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can a lawyer access to the court file online in USA?
That's a very good question. Yes, in most cases, a lawyer can access a court file remotely, meaning you can log on. You need a password, and it would allow you to access majority of the file via PDF. They're viewable files on PDF, but there are certain things that you are not entitled to as a lawyer, of course, the judge's notes and some of the criminal background information or confidential documents regarding minor children. Those things are not accessible, but vast majority of documents are available electronically to attorneys. That is the case in many jurisdictions, including our county, which saves a lot of time. You don't need to have someone go physically to the courthouse to look at files. Certainly there are some old files. If they're over 20 years old, they will not be scanned. They're not available electronically, but vast majority of new cases are readily available online. You pay a small fee to review the documents, download the documents, but that's a good question. And yes, it is available in the US, at least in California in our jurisdiction.
Honorable sir, I have another question. Does in California attorney have the digital ID system to access the online? Because many people can access as lawyers. Does the lawyers have the especially digital ID to access that?
That's a good question. In California, majority of proceedings are public. What that means is that anyone can access court files if they choose to. Nothing in here is limited to attorneys. There are some pleadings, very limited portion of the pleadings that might be limited to attorneys. So you need to get permission from the court, you get a password, username, and you have the ability to go in because we know who's looking at the files, we know who's downloading files, but vast majority of the files are available to the public. Anyone can walk into a court building and say, I want to look at this file. And the clerks will go through and take out any confidential documents, and it's available to the public. That's one of the beauties of what we do is nothing that we do is in secrecy. Anything that's worth doing has to be done in the open because that's what allows a system that allows integrity, trust in the process because people are entitled to see what is happening. But that's a good question. They don't have they get passwords and usernames issued to them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Yes. Honorable sir, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Sir, so according to the California bar requirements, what benefits a foreign lawyer who is willing to become a lawyer in USA would get if he or she chooses to pursue a JD over the LLM?
In state of California, there is no preference between a JD and an LLM. What will be required is the baby bar and the bar exam. That is the most important thing. There are many lawyers who sit for the exam who have an LLM, but you have to have the ability to pass the bar exam. I believe coming from a different jurisdiction, you will have to have the ability to pass the baby bar. That's going to be the biggest issue. I don't think it's significant that you need a JD or LLM, but I have to be honest, I don't know for certain. It's been quite a while since I looked at those requirements because it's been over, 2008 when I passed the bar, and it's been a while. But if I had to venture, I would say there's no significant distinction. What is important is whether you can sit for the baby bar exam because you have a legal degree, whether it's a JD or LLM, to sit for the baby bar exam.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other questions to be posed to Honorable Aruna Rodrigo?
May I add something that I think I missed earlier until we have another question?
Yes, sir, of course.
So one of the benefits I believe that I had in becoming a judge here was the Sri Lankan culture and background. I moved here when I was 10 years old with my family. My parents are typical traditional Sri Lankan parents. I think our values, when I say we or our values in general for Sri Lankans, we have a very different valuable aspect and perspective of how we treat parents, how we view the system, how we respect the elderly. I think that has allowed me to stand out quite a bit. I think that was something that is very unique and different that allowed me to be appointed because when I met with the governor of California for the appointment, that was something that he was genuinely interested in, is my culture and the experiences I had in growing up in Sri Lanka, even though in the grand scheme of things, it was 1/3 of my life, but still it was significant. I am proud to be Sri Lankan American, so that was a significant part of my appointment, I have to admit. There's an aspect that a lot of people don't recognize is that when you're a Sri Lankan American, I'm not really Sri Lankan. If I was to go to Sri Lanka and all of you heard me speak Sinhalese, you'll very likely laugh because I have a weird accent in the way I speak Sinhalese. In the US, I was not born here. In other words, I'm not fully American. I'm a unique hybrid that is Sri Lankan and American. And you have to be proud of who you are. You have to be comfortable in your own skin. And you need to be able to say, I am very proud to be Sri Lankan wherever you are. And you have to use that to your advantage. So I want all the young lawyers and everyone in Sri Lanka to understand that you should be using that as a pride. That should be a badge of courage of your culture and your upbringing, regardless of where you are, whether you're going to the Hindu temple, the mosque, or the Sri Lankan temples. It's a valuable tool. You are unique and you are something that the world is certainly going to embrace and recognize you for who you are. Any other questions? I'll be more than happy to answer anything you guys have. And I apologize that I missed out on some important aspects early in the beginning in our session.
Dear sir, dear Honorable Sir, I have one question.
Sure.
In Sri Lanka, we normally open a case, filing proxy and summons and plain. Can we know in family court how we start a case?
That's a good question. That's essentially the nuts and bolts. What we refer to as due process. Due process is guaranteed by the California Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. Essentially, it's notice, an opportunity to be heard. So when you file pleadings, whether it's civil, criminal, family law, whatever the case may be, it's initiated by filing of a petition, then issuance of a summons. The summons is a court order saying that the following action has been filed against you. You have 30 days to file a response. Failure to do so will result in a default. Defaults are not automatic. And as a judge, I'm very cautious about defaults. I scrutinize defaults because I want to make sure that our system, at least in my department, I don't rubber stamp orders. I review everything. I hear testimony from people before I sign an order, even if it's a default. We do require personal service. So mail service is insufficient in most cases for a summons and petition. We require personal service. There are individuals who are called process servers. That's their sole job. They're professional process servers who are licensed and bonded. They go out and serve people, and they file what's called a proof of service. So we also have mail service for all proceedings after the initial summons and petition. So the initial summons and petition must be personally served in the U.S. That's U.S. in individual constitutional provisions. But that's a very good question.
I thank you, sir.
Well, the Q&A session was a really informative session where our audience got the opportunity to ask many questions from Honorable Aruna Rodrigo. And when you mentioned that as Sri Lankans, we must have pride in being Sri Lankan, it was a very touching point you mentioned, because as Sri Lankans, we also believe that we could achieve any feat in anywhere in the world, since we have the raw talent back here in our country. And when an inspiring person states that kind of a remark, it is truly inspiring for us back here in Sri Lanka, especially for young lawyers. And so I guess that brings us to the conclusion of the first episode of the Lex Talk Webinar Series. And thank you so much, sir, for taking your time and to share insightful thoughts and inputs with us for the greater cause of giving much needed motivation, inspiration, and advice to the young lawyers in Sri Lanka to navigate themselves to achieve great heights in their professional careers. And I also wish you all the very best for all your future endeavors. Thank you so very much, sir, again. And
well, it was a pleasure. I apologize for the technical difficulties. If you have the ability to visit in the U.S., you are welcome to reach out to me. I will be more than happy to give you a personal tour and allow you to sit in my courtroom so you can see. I want to be something of a mentor to anybody who needs it. I want to make sure that we are here for a reason. That's to make everybody else's lives easier and to enrich other lives. So I take that job seriously. And nobody gets to where they are by themselves. It requires some help. So if you have the ability to stop by, you are in California, you're more than welcome to stop by. if you have any questions that you were not able to have answered, you're more than welcome to email the moderator. He has my work email, and he can certainly filter questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. If I'm in Sri Lanka, I'm sure that I will stop by, and I would love to meet you guys in person. My parents and my brothers were in Sri Lanka last December. I'm hoping to go to Sri Lanka soon, and I would love to meet each and every one of you in person, and then perhaps we can do something in person and then meet you, and we can have more in-depth discussions any of you have. And I would love a tour of the Sri Lankan courts and everything else that's there. But again, thank you everyone for taking the time. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot. And I guess that winds up our session, which was very fruitful and informative as the first episode of Lex Talk Webinar Series. And once again, thanking our resource person, Honorable Aruna Rodrigo, for his insightful thoughts and inputs. We would like to wind up our session today. So thank you for all the friends who joined us today with our session. And until we meet up with our next episode, stay safe and have a good night.